Okay, hi. So here we are for the 11th meeting of this group. Um, and today I suggested a theme that the ones that heard Leonid and Leonid Bloom speaking, um, I'm sure they heard this term because and I took the term from him. That I'm sure he took it from something else that he read somewhere else. He already told us from where from about the clocks in the concept of clocks within the living beings within the in this case the human body. And when I heard about this term the first time, clocks, I was like, what is he talking about? Like, what clocks? And then I said, okay, I get rhythms. Okay, cycles. Okay, cycles. But then Leonid just talks about his ideas in a word, like clocks in the body. It's a huge idea behind this simple word, this simple image. Um, and he talks well, at least for me, as if everyone is getting his idea plainly. I've talked with some people that heard his talks, some of his talks, talking about the clocks, and they told me I don't get exactly what Leonid is getting with the term clock. So I thought it would be a good subject for a short discussion between us. I also have a practical example of the use of this concept in my practice. Um, but this is only my idea of the words and of the concept that I would like to share, and to know if you have a different idea of the same concept, um, or you have if you have examples of yourself of your work and of your practice where this can be applied. So for me, clocks have to do with the cycles, with cyclical events within the human body, within any living being. Um, and the more obvious for me to go for the obvious first would be like breathing. Breathing is a cycle, so there's a clock for the breath, the breathing. There's a rhythm, there's a cycle going on, and that clock can go faster or slower depending on the needs of the body. Digestion, there's also a rhythm for digestion, and the clock of digestion can go so slower or faster. Circulation, blood circulation. These are just some examples that happen at the same time, in the same instant. All these clocks are ticking with different rhythms, with different speeds, um, but they need to be contemplated, to be recognized um, as present. And some clocks can, in my view, can influence others and can influence others and can I don't recall the like when an instrument is playing, a note is being played, a string is being trimmed in an instrument with a note, that vibration has by sympathy also vibrates in other instruments or strings around. Am I saying right?
I think so.
Okay, so
Korean sympathy, I don't know.
yeah, so there are rhythms in the body that can uh, take over other rhythms or
Influence
um,
them.
make other rhythms play by the same rhythm as the ones as that one that is um, more important or more made more conscious. Taking these rhythms that I just talked about, and for me the breathing is one that is very for me very easy to think about, to think of, and in movement practice is very present because not only we are always breathing, so we have to recognize that there is breathing happening always, and it varies. It oscillates in speed and in intensity and in depth. But uh, breathing is also very used as a cue for um, conveying exercise, for facilitating exercise, and for accessing the body in movement. And for me, it can be very. I remember the use of breath. Some people playing, making fun of people, others, trainers that put people in a treadmill, for example, and they say, "Yes, yes, keep breathing, breathe. Yes, keep breathing." Like, what else do you want me to do? If I stop breathing, I'll fall. So the cueing, the breathing can be also um, uma muleta, uh, something that
Necessary.
I sorry, something that I hold to help me uh, pass the time while I'm with a trainee during a trainer. If I don't know what to do or what to look at, keep breathing. Yes, breathe, breathe, breathe. Yes, keep breathing, keep breathing. So besides that, the cueing, the using of the breath as a cueing can,
Mhm.
for me, overlap all the other clocks and rhythms, cycles that I want to put um, working, that I want to start um, to start all the other rhythms that I want to start in the body. If I cue the breathing, for instance, I'm lifting my arms and lowering my arms, and I say, breathe in, breathe out. I have to go with the rhythm of the breath that I'm imposing. Because if I say breathe in, breathe out, but I let them do the movement slow, it's not possible.
Awareness.
So breath really controls the rhythm of other things that I do with myself. So, or it can control if I made it conscious. So if I want to go for other rhythms in myself or in the person that I'm facilitating, I should not superimpose the rhythm of the breath, or I should be careful the way I use the rhythm of the breath, the clock of the breath, so that it doesn't overlaps the other rhythms that I'm looking for. This is just one thing that I found very important for movement practitioners, especially in the fitness industry, because I see a lot of people, and in Pilates mainly, focusing on breathe in and start, breathe out and go, breathe in and start, hold and breath and breath. And so it's like they are getting
Wow.
mad and getting people mad with the rhythm of the breath. I don't know if you have something to say about it, or
Are you suggesting that the breath can synchronize the other clocks
yes, the breath can
somewhere?
synchronize and overlap the other clocks if I make the breath conscious, because I can, if I don't make it conscious, what I notice, for instance, if I start running and I can go on talking to the person I'm running with.
Mhm.
So I'm not really synchronizing the clock of the breath with the cycle of my stepping, of my running. But after some time, when I'm getting tired, more tired, I need to think of the rhythm of my breath, my breathing. Otherwise, I cannot go on doing the effort. So the breath can, in that sense, synchronize itself with the rhythm, or overlap the rhythm. So breath is a mystery here for me.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because well, the clocks immediately turns us into the realm of time. And when we think about time, we can think about different scales, as like Nidhi talked about it, and different scales of time inner the body or in the outer space of the body. And the breathing, well, we can evaluate it by externally because it's seen, but we understand that internally it plays an important role as well. And in that sense, exactly, we can influence the pace and the time in the body. I understand that it may be very confusing to cue from the breath, the external breath, the motion, because even though we understand that it plays an inner role, it is an external cue. The outcome, the pace is an external cue. And by externally cueing the movement, we normally can and motivate learning and motivate the movement practice. Because also, so it's an interesting point of view, because yeah, it is this duality, because we understand the breath happens within, and that's the thing we want to induce in our cueing, the inner optimal movement, not the external cueing or the external
the superimposing
container.
So
that's interesting. And
yeah,
well, but the breath plays a lot of roles, and we can fall on the bit of the types of breathing, or well, that's even more complicated. I don't know.
I just let me just say that there is a student of Ingmar Bartniev, or she studied with her along her, Selver, Elsa Selver, I think so. And she uses specifically the phrase saying that breath is used as support. So breath as support. In this sense, if breath is support, breath needs to support a higher rhythm, a higher internal rhythm, or a lower internal rhythm, and not go against the needs. Yeah.
Yeah. On the other hand, we have a lot of examples of an external motion, very paced, very fast, and the holding of a very low rhythm of the breath. Even in Pilates, we can have that experience a lot. So it's a very tricky
Miguel,
can
you talk more about what you mean? I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, in some motions, we can induce a very paced and fast movement on the body, and we can understand that we cannot synchronize that fast repetition with a fast breath. I cannot do this in my hand and breathe in this space, because otherwise I'm gonna faint. So I can do a very fast motion and maintain and hold a very paced breath.
Very slow breath, you mean?
Yes, but that can...
Thank you.
I think that's a very interesting tool to work with, because one of the mistakes, I don't want to call it mistakes, but one of the experiences of sometimes when these cycles are unsynchronized, we can observe that in a movement practice or in a movement exploration. Someone that tries to hold a rhythm of something, some motion, and normally people tend to perfecting it, pace it, and synchronize it with the breath. And it's a very mechanic breath. So this I'm just thinking about it because the clock paces and times it, and it gives us the image of time. And normally we can understand that these cycles can be synchronized with the external motion as well, and or not.
I'm curious, Susan, to know in Tai Chi, where the movements are completely internally driven. I'm talking by heart. I don't know, but very slow, very. Does the breathing is the breathing breath cued, cueing? Does the breath lead the movement, or is it mentioned?
This is a huge topic. Can I just mention I'm on my phone and I'm
Yeah.
trying to get in on my computer. Can we let me in
Okay.
on my computer and then we'll go in and I'll try
Okay.
to address.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so these breath breathing thing, this rhythm, this clock, for me it's very illustrative.
Wait, Nuno, did you understand what I was saying?
You were saying that
I'm in the waiting room on my computer.
Oh, wait. Oh, sorry.
No,
Oh, yes,
it's
I see.
okay.
I'm sorry. Yes,
So I'll
here
come
you
in
are.
and then I'll, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Recording in progress.
Great.
Sorry, I just had to like leave one meeting before I came into another.
Sorry.
There's an article that one of my first teachers, Robert Smith, wrote about breathing for the Journal of Asian Martial Arts many years ago. And in true Robert Smith fashion, the article is like 7 pages and the footnotes are like 9 pages or something like that. It's crazy, right? You have to read the footnotes.
Okay.
He talks about how at one point he had taught the form with a very specific breathing. When the arms go up and out, there's an inhale, space for the ribs to expand. And when the arms come in and down, there's exhale. There are people who studied with him during that time who memorized that breathing, those breathing patterns. And there's even a guy online who's teaching it that way, inhale and, exhale. And I don't have any problem with it. In the footnotes, Mr. Smith wrote, hello, are we waving? Hello, look at all the funny people on the screen.
She's not listening.
In the footnotes, he writes about how
This is my wife, Anna.
eventually, hello, nice to meet you.
Olá, Ningas.
How eventually he stopped doing it because people were so kind of hard focused on the breath that he felt it was interfering with the flow of their practice. Okay, because it was just making the practice more rigid because it was another external form that was being sort of imposed upon the Taiji form rather than. And so it's a very big discussion because I know some very advanced people and they'll say nobody teaches the breath anymore. I don't know whether they didn't read the footnote or
but
what.
How are the old masters? How did they talked about the breath, or
Yes,
did they talk about the breath?
Well, yes. So, you've heard my Tai Chi change a light bulb joke. Everybody knows something a little different. But one of the things that happens in the practice is you just focus on the flow of the movement and moving like a great river, and the form breathes you. The
Good.
form breathes you.
Okay. Okay.
And what I have come to understand just through my practice and such is it is not a inhale for this many seconds, exhale for that many seconds. That if you do it that way, like Miguel was saying, it's a machine model, right? If you watch creatures breathe, animals, they don't breathe like clockwork. We're talking about clocks, and this is something a little different. One way of working with the image of the clock, they don't breathe like clockwork. They'll breathe, watch a dog when it's sleeping, whatever, they'll breathe faster, and then more slowly, and then they'll stop, and then they'll start again. And with a machine model for breathing, oh my God, he stopped breathing, oh, he's speeding up, whatever. It's like, well, is he having a dream? I mean, it's like, and so I think with movement, when we, exercise is often a very patterned rhythmic movement, which can be really good for us. Steve talks about the benefit of the patterned rhythmic movement. But if you're forcing the breath, I'm not sure you're doing yourself any favors. So I think the breath is more like, I have a music background, right? One of the things that I had to get used to, because I had been doing, I've been coming from folk and rock and jazz, and then getting into classical music, you don't keep 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 evenly, right? You speed up and slow down and da 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 da, which is actually more organic, right? Especially if it's done organically.
Yeah.
Everybody can play things differently, but in jazz, that steady beat, generally speaking, there are always people breaking rules, but that's the key. That's the thing you keep. You don't lose it. And so I think we have to be careful when we're talking about the body and breathing. My gosh, obviously, it seems to me we could do a 6-week thing just on breathing and never get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
Breathing is one thing, and the clocks issue is another. And yes, there's definitely overlap.
Of course. I just wanted to mention the breathing in the clocks because I think the clocks in biotensegrity and the way Leonid uses them, the term, have to do more with the biotensegrity model and with the Gamberto's mesh between endoderm and ectoderm. So it has to do with the different depths in the body where movement happens in different time scales and in different movement scales even also. So the inside of the so I think Leonid's idea of clocks has more to do with that, but the concept of clocks for me, for people to understand and for me to understand, I had to go to a very basic thing as breathing as a clock.
Yeah.
And okay, now I get a little bit more sense of the rhythms that happen, the difference, and I go with the thought, and then I can go to the thing which is the thing that we should be speaking about now. The clocks of Leonid, which is the different time scales and the different time and space scales and the transition.
You were talking about the orchestra, right? It's like that with our bodies too. I mean, you don't try to breathe and make your heartbeat rhythm and your breath be perfectly synced, because the heart's got to do what the heart's got to do. And we know that what is a marker of health is heart rate variability.
Yeah.
Not heart rate like a machine consistency. It's the variability in that responsiveness. Okay. So there's two kind of loud rhythms that you can hear, big loud rhythms, right? And if you're very relaxed, I've been able to do it. I don't do it all the time, but you can feel your craniosacral rhythm.
Yeah.
And that's quite a bit slower. I mean, you have to be very relaxed, but you can feel that expansion and then that condensation. It's a slower rhythm than the heartbeat. Generally slower than the breath, but there's a very wide range of what is the right rhythm for breathing. And a whole lot of people, I mean, really, that's a very long, there's a very wide range of what is right for breathing.
Yeah. I agree with you.
Yeah. And so, those are rhythms that are pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
But then we have phase change, which is instant.
Yes. And I think
there's soft matter, right?
Yeah. And
but
that's
then there's
what
oscillation. I think he's talking more maybe about the multi-scale levels of oscillatory behavior.
Yes. The transition between, and to understand his way of speaking of things, you really need to have that image in mind of the different scales, the different depths, and the traveling between one derm to the other side of the derm, to other sides, to understand that what is happening. He also uses the image of the grandiosity of what's happening inside to a very small thing happening outside. Like so if I do one small movement outside, if I perceive one small movement outside, I know that there needs to be, with this conception of the living matter, there needs to be a huge amount of movement everywhere in a very smaller and smaller scales, time and dimension scale, time and space scales, happening at the same time in multiple directions, in multiple things. So he uses the metaphor, the image of the kilograms or tons of movement happening for a small gram of movement happening outside. So it transfers the units to give the image of the relation of the outside to the inside, and this connecting to the clocks, the notion of the paced clock outside, small or normal for us, but it's a paced clock, rhythmic. But inside, it's like, looks like chaotic, but there are a bunch of clocks and counter clocks and blah, 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 happening at the same time of that paced outside.
Yes.
And I think it gives a good image of biotensegrity and of how the living matter is organized, even in a felt sense for me, because if I direct people to what's happening inside during a small movement outside, because we all do small movements in Pilates, very small movements. Some people say this is very slow. We don't do anything in Pilates. This is very slow. But if you focus in what's happening inside, and if I know how to facilitate the access inside to what may be happening in terms of sensations and tinglings and the cascade of events that happen inside, then what I have as a feedback from people is that this needs a huge presence of myself. This practice, I need to be very, very present, like in Tai Chi for sure, because every very, very tiny movement, small movement corresponds to a huge thing happening inside the body. So clocks outside, clocks inside.
Clocks outside, clocks inside. Well, look, we live in seasons.
Yeah.
That's a clock, right? I wrote about this in my book to some extent, right? I think in systems and maybe oscillations and soft matter chapters, you know, there are time scales in nature. You know, there are 20-year systems. There are, you know what I mean? I mean, there's a 30-day roughly system or cycle. So the cycles, there are different cyclical time scales. I mean, there are different time scales of cyclical systems. You know, we generally we sleep every night and we're awake in the day or whatever it is, but then we also live at a monthly cycle level and an annual cycle level, and more, right? Because and then we've got, you know, growth spurts, or we've got, you know, different, something breaks and it has a time for healing. You know, there's just so many different clock-y things, clock-like things.
Yeah, clock-like things. Yes, yes. So I think the image of the clocks is very suitable for understanding the functioning. It's one map. It's one image that serves very well the understanding of how the body functions. I think
as
so.
long as we don't get rigid with it.
Yes, yes. But to use the clocks, you really need to have the biotensegrity model and not the biomechanical model, because it doesn't fit there.
I mean, I
the
guess
clocks are so rigid.
If I was going to try to do it with machinery, right, then I'd be looking at gears and pulleys that can translate something into something longer and shorter, quicker, slower. You know, there are mechanical systems, and we can make use of any metaphors we like, that as long as they serve purpose.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's true. Miguel, you have something to say?
Say that as long as you are alive, it's working something.
Exactly. Many things, right? And in many scales. So then you're back to the orchestra, right? Or a band, you know, where you may have a steady drum beat, but then you may have something else that's going very fast, very high frequencies, very low frequencies. So you're back to that.
Yeah, it's funny because even though I don't think it's, in order to have because synchronize is not a good word, because synchronize drives us to something that is very organized or very paced, like
too rigid.
Too rigid, like you understand the idea, but you understand that movement. In movement, there is no overlap of any of the clocks, but they are in some way synchronized, not in a rigid way, because breath is like that. So
maybe synchronized isn't a bad word. It's how we think of it, or something. I don't know. You know how there are dolphins. Male dolphins often have there'll be a buddy system, like two guy dolphins who enjoy swimming around together. and they'll be swimming around together. They'll dive, they'll go this way, they'll go that way. They're not having a conversation. Okay, let's go left.
Yeah.
They're just like birds in a flock. It's happening. What's happening with birds in a flock? How did they all of a sudden all go this way? You know, with a downward swoop, you know, or whatever. There's something in a synchrony there.
Yeah.
That maybe if the fault is mine for saying that it's rigid, because maybe thinking more about it, there's lots of synchrony that's not rigid.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah.
There's a big challenge to do that. Somewhere.
Yeah.
A big challenge.
But what's good is that we ask the questions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You just gave a very good example of what's happening in other modalities like in Pilates, because we also have the same discussion. How do we breathe? When to breathe? How is the breath in this motion and in that motion? And there is a saying, my teacher that learned from Joseph Pilates directly, she used to say, when we asked her, hey Romana, how do we breathe here? And she said, Mr. Joe said that you cannot teach a horse how to breathe. That was her answer.
That's a really great answer.
We were going like, what is she getting to? And
that's great.
Now we understand. You cannot teach a horse how to breathe, or through the mouth and through the nose and through the mouth. And that was it. Like, just stay alive. Stay alive. Cope with it. Cope with the thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was puzzling, but it was very, very good. Yeah.
It makes me wonder, you know, do people study the breathing rhythms of mammals who live in the water? You know, because they've got to come up for air. So that would be an interesting, you know, measurement. Do you know what I mean? But you're absolutely right. You're not going to try to tell a horse how to breathe. That's really good.
Yeah. This was Joe Pilates saying.
Great.
Yeah.
Which is to say, breathe naturally.
Breathe naturally, yes.
At the end of the day, with Mr. Smith's article, that's what he was saying, breathe naturally. Now, when you're working with people, okay, I taught for many years for a health system just outside of DC in Virginia, and I taught Qigong and Tai Chi. So people would come when they were going through health challenges or in recovery from something. And I was, you know, I would talk about the breath all the time. This one woman said, whenever you tell me to breathe, it scares me to death. I learned later she had lung cancer.
Oh.
Okay, so I didn't ask people when they came in, what's your malady? What's your malady? I kind of take everybody with what they bring me. If they want to tell me, I would offer. If there's something you think I should know, let me know. If there's something you want to keep to yourself, that's fine. And so here I am very casually talking about breathing and telling people to breathe to the bottom of your feet. There's a big one for us, right? And whenever I mentioned breathing, it would just bring her to fear. So we had to manage that. And so we have our ideas, but then we can forget sometimes that specific people are going to hear what we think of as a very innocent, innocuous directive, you know.
Yeah.
And they're going to hear it in a completely different way.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So we ended up more in the breath than in the clocks themselves, but I think we talked about the concept, and I think it helps for people to understand, oh, clocks, yes, Now I'm hearing more about rhythms and different rhythms and yeah, different paces.
Can I say something else about it?
Please do.
We like to control things, right? I mean, how many systems of breathing are there? And I love them. Breathe in for 3 seconds, breathe out for 8 seconds, or the box, or breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, and they're all equal, whatever. There are so many different systems, right? But then what we have to remember about these clocks are they're not about our conscious mind becoming aware of them so we can control them. Like, we think there's great value in that, or we're kidding ourselves when we think there's great value in that. I mean, if you get benefit, it's fine. But we have to remember this Joe Pilates thing, you don't teach a horse to breathe. Because there are clock levels of cycles and systems we can never access with our conscious mind. They're below the level of consciousness. And they're right down to chemical reaction functioning and phase change. You're not going to control that. So we kid ourselves when we think it's all about control too.
It can even detrimental to have control over some internal unconscious, supposedly unconscious rhythms. You can kill yourself. Yeah,
I think so. We try to make something regular because when we think that's better, I worry about people sometimes on breathing machines because it's a regular rhythm, and that's not natural to the system.
Of course. Yeah. Yes. Good. So we are just getting to the end of our hour. Do any of you have something you want to say?
Well, I think it would be great to hear Leonid talk more about the clocks. Then we'll know whether we're completely off base or whether
we will pull him to that side of the talk. Yes, if he feels like, because it's always the way he wants to go, he goes.
Yes, and it's always
Miguel.
wonderful.
Yes, always.
Well, I have to say I had a very good time on these 9 meetings that I attended, 11 in total. I'm a little bit sad that it ends, but another one will come, I'm sure of it.
Yes.
So
we are opening the door for other things.
Of course.
So let's make it. Good. Okay, I'm just going to interrupt the recording. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.